Beneath the expanse of the Pacific, sunlight bounced off the steel skin of the USS Independence, a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, as it cut through the waves like a floating city with a mission stitched tightly to its hull. Above the noise of the sea and the distant rumble of jet engines, the ship pulsed with a rhythm of its own. Organized chaos, steady movement, a world both detached from and connected to the events it silently watched from offshore. Petty Officer Marcus Doyle, 32, moved briskly across the hangar deck, the familiar weight of his helmet and float coat pressing down as though reminding him where he was. He had served nearly a decade on carriers, but the Independence felt different. There was a tension on board lately, unspoken but undeniable. The crew operated like clockwork, but behind every salute, every nod, there was a question everyone was too professional to ask out loud. Why were they out here, shadowing a stretch of ocean that was quiet, too quiet? Across the ship, buried deep below the flight deck, Lieutenant Commander Elena Park reviewed the latest intelligence feed in the Combat Information Center. She was sharp, deliberate, and fiercely respected. A Korean-American officer whose presence calmed more junior crew. Her screen glowed dimly in the low red lighting, one of the protocols during nighttime readiness. A civilian cargo vessel had altered its course hours earlier, deviating from expected shipping lanes. It didn't raise alarms initially until it went dark. No AIS signal, no response on international hailing frequencies. Could be nothing, her operations officer had muttered. Park didn't believe in coincidences at sea. Up top, Captain John Harlan surveyed the horizon from the bridge. A career Navy man with a baritone voice and calm eyes, he carried command like a second skin. To his left stood Executive Officer Riley Webb, younger, hungrier, and always anticipating the next order before it was given. Harlan didn't speak much during watches. He preferred listening. The stillness of the open sea sometimes revealed more than radar ever could. The Independence was running a black steam protocol, minimal lighting, reduced electronic emissions, no unnecessary communication. It wasn't war footing, but it wasn't peace either. This was the phase no civilian ever saw, the long tension before something breaks or bends. Every jet that roared off the flight deck was a message, a signal. "We're here. We see you." Doyle checked the tow tractor attached to a waiting FA-18, ensuring the nose wheel was secure before waving the pilot forward. Jet blasts flared, briefly painting the night deck in white-hot light. Within seconds, the aircraft vanished into the sky. He exhaled. One more bird launched, one more layer of silence lifted from the sea. In the crew's mess below, amid the clatter of trays and quiet conversations, aviation structural mechanic first-class Jasmine Rios nursed a cup of instant coffee. She was one of the best airframe techs on board, fast, intuitive, and relentless. Word traveled fast below decks, and the chatter wasn't about food shortages or sleep deprivation this time. It was the mystery ship, the one that had gone silent. "You think it's Russian?" a junior sailor asked between spoonfuls of rehydrated beef stew. "Could be, or Chinese, or pirates," Rios replied, though her voice lacked conviction. "You're not supposed to speculate," the kid said nervously. "I'm not. I'm just saying, ships don't vanish out here, not without a reason." Meanwhile, down in the reactor compartment, Chief Engineer Alan Wu monitored the energy output feeds. The humming of the twin nuclear reactors, a constant lull in the background. No lights flickered, no warnings buzzed, everything appeared stable, and yet, like the rest of the crew, Wu had a gut instinct that something was about to shift. Systems don't get quiet unless someone makes them quiet. Back in the CIC, Park tapped her earpiece. An airborne radar operator was reporting visual on a ship matching the missing cargo vessel's profile. Lights off. No response. Park's jaw tightened. "Is it drifting?" "Negative. It's holding course at low speed. Too steady for an abandoned vessel." "Notify the captain." she said without turning. A subtle pause spread across the CIC like a ripple through calm water. Then movement. Orders flowed, radios crackled. The Independence was turning, slowly but purposefully. On the bridge, Harlan listened, nodded, and gave the order to shadow the contact at a distance of 10 nautical miles. "Maintain radio silence," he said. "Launch drone recon. No weapons hot yet." Doyle, now back in the maintenance bay, looked up at the overhead speakers as a coded signal buzzed across the system. It wasn't an alert, not yet, but close. He motioned to his crew, tools clanking against their belts. Whatever was happening, they needed every jet prepped. On the flight deck, under a moonless sky, a fresh wave of Hornets was being armed. The air felt tighter, like something unseen pressing down from the stratosphere. Below, Rios stood at the base of the ladder well, arms folded, listening to the distant rumble overhead. "Something's going down," she whispered to no one in particular. And in the command center, Elena Park stared at the ghost ship on her screen, her eyes narrowing. "Whoever they are," she said quietly, "they're not just hiding." And for the first time in hours, Harlan gave voice to what everyone had begun to fear. "They're waiting." The following morning arrived without the warmth of sunlight. A thick, low fog clung to the horizon like a warning. From the bridge of the Independence, the sea ahead looked calm, but every sailor on board could feel the difference. Something had shifted in the air, like the moment just before a storm breaks open. Captain Harlan stood motionless, binoculars in hand, not because he expected to see anything with his own eyes, but because he wanted to feel the distance between them and the ghost ship. The drone feed had returned overnight. Grainy, infrared visuals showing a cargo ship running dark. No name on the hull, no flag. But something stranger, heat signatures moving inside, too slow and patterned for crew. The ship wasn't abandoned, but it didn't look alive either. Lieutenant Commander Elena Park studied those same frames for hours. She'd frozen one frame and enhanced it. Rows of containers, many modified with small antennae and reinforced corners. They weren't cargo containers. They were disguised modules, listening posts, maybe missile launchers, maybe worse, and still no identification. Whoever was aboard that ship had gone to great lengths to remain invisible in plain sight. In the ready room, the aviators were unusually quiet. Commander Josh Lang, the KAG, commander of the air group, stood beside a screen displaying the flight plan. He was a no-nonsense pilot, respected more for his calm under pressure than for fiery speeches. "We've got a recon sweep at 600 feet off their port quarter. You're not to engage unless you take fire. Eyes on target. Bring back evidence, not war." His wingmen nodded, each one silently preparing for something that felt less like recon and more like poker with a loaded deck. Lang's gut told him the moment they got close, the bluff would be over. Down below, Petty Officer Marcus Doyle double-checked the flight line. Each aircraft was armed light, just enough to defend themselves, not enough to provoke. Yet even that delicate balance felt risky. He watched as the launch crews finished their work and saluted the pilots one by one. The first jet roared into the sky, followed by another, slicing through the cloud cover with precision. In her compartment, Jasmine Rios reviewed maintenance logs, trying to distract herself. But her thoughts kept returning to that unmarked ship. She'd heard rumors over breakfast. Someone claimed they'd intercepted fragments of radio chatter in Russian. Another insisted it was Chinese. Others whispered about private military contractors. No one knew for sure, and that uncertainty was starting to eat at the crew. As the recon jets closed the distance, the crew on the Independence held their collective breath. Aboard the aircraft, Lang kept his eyes on the radar. Closing in, visual in 30 seconds. He scanned the vessel through his canopy, and his voice changed. "It's not commercial. Repeat. It is not a commercial ship." The hull was military-grade, masked in the shape of a cargo ship, The containers were arranged with unnatural symmetry. No deck crew, no bridge lights, just black steel and silence. Then, a flicker. "Missile lock! Breaking left!" Lang shouted, the warning tone screaming in his headset. The jets peeled away in coordinated evasion, but the lock vanished as quickly as it appeared. No missile launched, just the threat. Silent, cold, calculated. Back on the carrier, the CIC erupted in activity. Park relayed the telemetry to Harlan, who absorbed it with the grim look of a man walking a tightrope over a canyon. "They didn't fire," he said aloud. "They just wanted us to know they could." "We need confirmation," Park replied. "We need to know what's inside those modules." Harlan nodded. "Send the Seahawk. Low altitude, infrared imaging, no electronic pings." The MH-60 Seahawk lifted off the flight deck 30 minutes later, carrying a crew trained in anti-submarine warfare, but today their role had changed. They were eyes only. Inside the aircraft, the sensor operator focused on the mystery ship. His screen flickered as the Seahawk hovered just out of range. "I've got heat blooms, mid-deck. Something's powering up." He zoomed in. "Sir, these aren't storage containers, they're missile silos." In that moment, everything changed. Rios, still below deck, heard the news from a petty officer rushing past. "Missile tubes," he muttered. She dropped her wrench and followed him, adrenaline rising. In the CIC, Harlan issued the order. "Go to Condition 1. I want cap in the sky, defensive posture only. We're not the ones starting this." Alarms blared softly. Lights shifted red. Doors locked and crews scrambled. The Independence transformed, no longer just a floating city but a fortress prepared for confrontation. As jets launched into the mist once more, Doyle stood by, feeling the deck vibrate beneath his boots. He exchanged a glance with Rios, who had joined him on the catwalk above the flight line. "This doesn't feel like a drill," she said. "It's not," Doyle replied. Inside the Combat Information Center, Park's eyes darted between screens. The rogue vessel had begun turning, not away, but toward them, slowly, deliberately. "Are they trying to flank us?" Webb asked from behind the captain. Harlan's voice cut through. "Number." "They're trying to provoke a reaction." "They'll get one if they fire," Park muttered. Harlan didn't reply immediately. Then he turned to her. "Let's hope they don't." On the outer edge of radar range, other signals began to appear, unmarked, spread evenly across the sector. More ships? Park leaned forward. "We've just stepped into a net." And all at once, the fog outside seemed far more dangerous than what it concealed. A sharp jolt rattled the entire carrier, sending coffee mugs tumbling in the galley and momentarily halting conversations. Captain Morales didn't flinch. He had seen worse in the Persian Gulf, but even he knew this wasn't just turbulence. A systems glitch had sparked a temporary failure in the port-side stabilizers. Within moments, alarms were muted, and crew members returned to their duties with surgical precision. On a ship that functioned like a floating metropolis, there was no room for panic. Below deck, Petty Officer Lena Torres was inspecting one of the power conduits feeding the radar system. The issue wasn't mechanical, she noted. It was procedural. Someone had overridden the automated diagnostic protocols. That pointed to either a critical mistake or deliberate sabotage. Above her, on the flight deck, Lieutenant Harris was overseeing preparations for night operations. The deck, illuminated by minimal red lighting, gave the carrier its ghostly, dark mode profile, invisible to most radar and infrared scans. But the silence was deceptive. Jets were being prepped in hushed coordination, catapults armed, fuel lines checked, and every hand moving with rehearsed speed. The carrier was gearing up for a coordinated strike simulation, one that mirrored real-world combat scenarios, down to the second. If anyone made a misstep, lives could be lost in an instant. Inside the Combat Information Center, or CIC, the heartbeat of the ship, Commander Reeves studied a cluster of fast-moving contacts appearing near their perimeter. While officially part of the exercise, something about one contact didn't add up. It was too far off course, broadcasting a call sign that hadn't been cleared in pre-mission planning. "Could be a data error," his tech chief offered. Reeves wasn't so sure. "Flag it," he ordered. "Keep it under passive observation." Meanwhile, in the mess hall, whispers were circulating. Word spread quickly on ships. Too quickly. Speculation turned to rumor, and rumor to paranoia. Someone said there'd been a cyber breach. Someone else mentioned that a drone had been spotted trailing the ship days earlier. Most dismissed it as bored talk. But to Master Chief Harlan, it rang too close to recent briefings from ONI, Naval Intelligence. The Chinese had been experimenting with drone swarms mimicking seabird formations, hard to detect, easy to overlook. If one had slipped through the picket line, they had a bigger problem than a training exercise gone wrong. Later that evening, Captain Morales gathered the senior staff. "This is no longer a simulation," he stated. "That unknown contact has deviated course twice, once toward our strike group. That's not an error. It's a probe." The room went silent. Harris looked to Torres, whose systems were now critical in scanning for data anomalies. She nodded, already 2 steps ahead. "We've isolated the intrusion vector," she said. "It came through the weather relay, a piggyback packet cloaked in a satellite feed." They had been watched. Not just watched, but studied. Morales made the call. The carrier would break formation and go completely dark. MCON level 0. All outward communications halted. No radar, no sonar pings, no light beyond what was needed for survival. If they were being hunted, they would disappear into the vastness of the sea. That's what the Navy called a black hole maneuver, and only the most prepared, the most disciplined, could execute it without unraveling. For the crew, this meant long hours with no external updates, no personal calls, no streaming messages from home. Isolation bore down on them. Every creak of the hull, every faint echo in a corridor was now a reminder that they had vanished from the visible world. And for some, it was their first time experiencing this kind of silence. It was more than eerie. It was psychological warfare against an enemy that hadn't even fired a shot. Deep below, in the engine rooms and the data centers, the ship's mind kept whirring. If they couldn't transmit, they could still record. Every byte of suspicious telemetry, every blip from a drifting sonar ping was logged and analyzed. It was a waiting game now. They couldn't go on the offensive until they understood what they were up against. The final hour of darkness came with a revelation. A stealth drone, skimming wave crests 15 nautical miles out, activated just long enough to be seen intentionally. Its signal bore a digital watermark, not Chinese, not Russian. It was traced back to a rogue surveillance outfit hired by a private military contractor. An unauthorized op, masquerading as an official drill observer. With this new intelligence, Morales knew the mission had changed. This wasn't just about readiness. It was about sovereignty, defense, and maintaining control of the seas in a time where warfare was just as digital as it was physical. The carrier remained dark another 6 hours before surfacing on comms with the strike group. But by then, the data they had gathered was already en route to analysts in Hawaii. As the crew returned to standard operations, light returned to the flight deck, and jets roared back into the sky. But something had shifted. For Morales, for Torres, Harris, and every soul aboard that ship, the lesson was seared into their routines. Darkness wasn't just about stealth. It was about survival,